Welcome to this explainer on financial literacy basics. Look, I am absolutely thrilled you're here with us today. We are going to completely shift your perspective. My goal for you right now, as we dive into this 7-minute explainer to build the wholesome understanding of the topic, is to move you away from treating money as just static math. Just boring numbers on a screen. Instead, we're going to empower you to start treating it as a dynamic, living system. Because here's the secret. Once you can actually see the system, you finally gain control over it.
So here is our roadmap for today. 1. Why money feels hard. 2. The core rules of money. 3. When rules meet reality. And finally 4. From knowing to doing.
Okay, let's dive into this. Part 1. Why money feels hard and understanding those invisible pressures. If you've ever felt completely frustrated by your finances, I really want you to know you are not alone. And honestly, there's a totally mechanical reason for it. Why does money seem to disappear so quickly even when your income looks totally fine? It's such a huge common source of anxiety for so many of us. I want you to think of your money kind of like the power distribution grid in a massive city. When electricity is just flowing steadily, life feels incredibly manageable, right? Everything works. But when the demand, the supply, and the timing of that power don't perfectly line up, well, the grid struggles. Everything suddenly becomes way harder to predict. Money works in the exact same way. It is literally constantly being pulled by different forces all at once. Your earning, spending, saving, borrowing, and of course, inflation.
The old way of thinking treats money as just static paper or just some digits sitting in an app doing absolutely nothing. But the real, accurate view is that money is actually a system for moving value through time. Think about it. The exact same dollar or rupee or whatever currency you use to buy your lunch today is part of the exact same pool that has to stretch across next week's rent, your debt payments, and your future plans. It is never just sitting still. It's always in motion.
All right, moving right along to part 2. The core rules of money, the hidden forces shaping your wallet. So the crucial point is, now that we know money is this moving, dynamic system, we have to recognize that money is always a choice between competing uses. Every single unit of currency you have can only do one thing at a time. It's kind of like a single bucket of water. You can absolutely pour more water into one specific container, but the bucket itself, it isn't infinite. If one part gets more, another part simply has to get less. That's just the reality of it. This is the ultimate trade-off rule. And here's the kicker. Earning a higher income doesn't magically remove these trade-offs. It really just gives you a slightly larger bucket.
There is a massive distinction here between two terms that get confused all the time. Income is just money arriving. Cash flow, on the other hand, is money entering and leaving over time. Earning money and actually having usable money on entirely different things. Imagine a water tap and a drainage system. A brilliantly strong tap does not help you much if the drain at the bottom is open wider than the tap. If money leaves faster than it enters, pressure builds up instantly. And that happens regardless of how high your salary is.
And that brings us to why our next rule is absolutely vital. Saving is not leftover money. It protects future choices. A lot of us tend to treat saving like it's just whatever happens to magically remain after a full month of spending. But let's be real. Human nature dictates that spending always expands to fill whatever is available, and usually it's on things we don't actually need, right? Instead, I want you to think of savings like moving water into a completely secure container before your main tank is completely used up. It acts as essential structural support. It's what keeps a tiny little inconvenience, like a broken phone, from suddenly turning into a full-blown financial crisis. Now, on the flip side of saving, we have borrowing. Borrowing pulls tomorrow's kitchen into today's meal. It is a highly deliberate time shift. It allows you to solve your hunger right now with money you haven't even earned yet. But it mathematically guarantees that tomorrow's kitchen is going to be lighter. Debt is not free money. It's a firm commitment across time. When you borrow, the loan itself isn't the whole story at all. What really matters is whether your future cash flow can actually carry the weight of that new commitment. Also, money never exists in a vacuum. It's kind of like a pinch of salt in cooking. A little salt can make a dish taste incredible, but that exact same amount of salt will have a completely different effect depending on what else is already in the pot. Money's real power depends strictly on the financial conditions surrounding it. We're talking about changing prices, shifting needs, fluctuating income, and varying interest rates. Which brings us to part 3, when rules meet reality, the collision of money and life.
Out there in the real world, these rules, they don't just happen neatly one at a time. They collide, creating what we call a pressure pattern. Let's actually walk through it together, like a row of falling dominoes. First, let's say spending rises. Well, because spending rises, your savings inevitably fall. Because your savings fall, any sudden emergency becomes much, much riskier. That heightened risk makes borrowing highly likely. And because you had to borrow, well, your future cash flow just became incredibly tight. Notice how that happened? One single, isolated financial choice triggered a total domino effect across your entire life. A financial issue is almost never a single event. It is a full-on pressure pattern.
To analyze these patterns, we use something called the rule of 3 layers. Basically, every money decision you make operates on 3 layers simultaneously. Layer 1, today, asks, what happens right now? This reveals your immediate comfort or pain. Layer 2, later, asks, what happens over time? This reveals your future costs or benefits. But the absolute most crucial layer is the hidden system. It asks, what pattern does this create? This reveals if you are fundamentally strengthening or weakening your overall finances. You see, short-term decisions that feel incredibly good today can quietly accumulate into massive, crushing long-term pressure in that hidden system.
And ultimately, this dictates your overall financial stability, or on the flip side, your fragility. Think of a sturdy, 4-legged table representing true stability. You have your income, you have your savings, manageable debt, and realistic spending. 4 solid legs. Now compare that to a 1-legged stool, which represents fragility. You might boast a really high income, sure, but you have totally unpredictable cash flow and heavy, rigid commitments. Listen, true financial health isn't about lacking problems. That's impossible. It's about having the structural, multi-legged support to absorb those inevitable problems without collapsing.
Let's move to part 4 and see how this builds into real action. From knowing to doing, reading the system to make calmer decisions. When you finally start to read the system, your whole perspective shifts. It's amazing. A purchase is no longer just a purchase, it's a trade-off. A salary is a flow. Saving, that's future stability. A loan is a commitment. And importantly, and I really want to emphasize this, a budget is not a punishment. Not at all. It is an essential map of priorities, dictating exactly where your attention goes before the money disappears. A budget simply manages the necessary tension between your present self, who wants ease right now, and your future self, who really needs stability. So, as we come to the end of this explainer, I want to leave you with a real challenge. I want you to stop asking that anxious question, did I do money right? Instead, try systematically analyzing your next purchase by asking this, what pattern did this choice create, and what will it do next? When you start asking that, you stop being a victim to isolated, random events, and you actually start mastering the system. Thank you so much for learning with me today. Take these tools, start reading those patterns, and I will see you next time.